But first tonight, a very disturbing story that's coming in from Jharkhand about the gang rape of a 14-year-old girl in the state who was then subsequently burnt alive. It turns out that after her gang rape, the village panchayat met. It also announced a punishment for the alleged rapist. But after that, they literally barged into her home. They beat up her parents and burnt her alive. Let's take a look at this story.
ये मेरे भाई के यहाँ शादी हो रहा था, वहीं हम लोग सब डीजे बाज रहा था। हम लोग उधर काम में उजराल थे और इसी के बीच में लड़की गई पानी लाने के लिए, उधर से आया और उसको मुंह बंद करके वो जो है इसे गाड़ी में बैठा के लड़की के फरार हो गया। उसके बाद उसने रेप किया।
Manish Kumar now joining us with more on that big story. Manish, very horrific details there. What more do we know? What are police saying?
The police is saying that raids are going on to nab the culprits because all these people, most of the accused, there is one main accused and there are two accomplices, his relatives only. They are on the run, but they are from the same village, they knew each other. Police is not ruling out the love angle in this case. They are saying that this accused wanted to marry this girl, but the family members, they were not ready for that, even though they come from a very poor family. And the last night attack took place because of that. First he tried to kidnap her, then he sexually assaulted her, he tried to rape her, and later on when this matter went to the panchayat, out of the sheer anger he tried to he first beaten up the parents, then he set the girl on fire. So it's a very horrific detail, and all these things took place in front of the entire panchayat, which could not do anything, although they gave a punishment. They announced that he will have to pay 50,000 to victim's family, but later on this guy, he did not agree, and he not only beaten up them, but he also set the girl on fire. Nidhi.
Absolutely horrific there, Manish. Thanks a lot for that, and we will be following up that story over the weekend as well, because as Manish pointed out there, the details of this case are actually so harrowing when you look at how this played out, and that story is actually breaking just days after the centre brought in an ordinance to fast-track child rape trials in a time-bound manner and also set up special courts to hear them. Now, the Supreme Court has also stepped in, telling high courts across the country to set up committees of judges to monitor and regulate these trials on a consistent basis. But just the sheer numbers of cases pending before the justice system are so staggering. It's a wonder how this is going to actually be achieved. More than 1 lakh cases of child sexual assault are currently pending in India's courts. The wait for an outcome takes years, sometimes even decades, and the conviction rates are abysmally low. Sonal Mehrotra brings us this reality check.
Just 12, visually impaired and sexually assaulted by her school auto driver. Back in September of 2013, while visiting a local shop after school, she was picked up, taken to a secluded place and raped. The police acted and arrested the accused, but even now, 5 years since that horrific day, there is no court verdict.
5 साल हो गया, इतना दिन से हो रहा है, अभी क्या पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है, नहीं हो रहा है, वो भी तो हमारा पता नहीं चल रहा है। कोई मेरा बच्चा आँख नहीं है, यहाँ रुकेगी, मेरी बच्ची अच्छी हो जाएगी। कोर्ट में लेके आना पड़ता है, मैडम लोग खराब होता है, बोलता नहीं ऐसा बच्चा हम लोग का रखोगे नहीं।
From her small roadside shop, this mother of 3 earns just about 500 rupees per day. Going to court regularly has taken a huge hit on her livelihood.
इंग्लिश का पेपर था, 2 दिन में बच्चे को मैं लेके आ गया, पेपर का दिन, फिर बच्चे को यहाँ लेके आके पूरा दिन रुकते रुकते तो अभी बच्चे को बयान नहीं हुआ, पेपर भी गया, फिर मेरा बच्चे का बयान भी नहीं चला।
According to government's own figures in 2017, a child is raped every 15 minutes in this country. Adding to the statistic is a story of a young boy. Just 6-year-old, and on a busy evening in South Delhi, he was picked up by his neighbor, raped and sodomized, to the extent that when he was finally found and taken to the hospital, the doctors said he could no longer walk. Now, 3 years down the line, his rapist is behind bars, but his trial is still lingering on. Even the key witnesses and their testimonies are yet to be recorded.
बच्चा दिन पर दिन बड़ा होता जा रहा है, वो कहता है कि पापा हम बार-बार नहीं जा सकते, तो क्योंकि बच्चा समझदार होता जाएगा तो बार-बार उसको एक ही बात को बार-बार जिक्र किया जाएगा तो उसको अच्छा नहीं लगता इस बात को.
But defeating all odds, his father, a rickshaw puller, has been going to court regularly. But when you have a family of 8 and earn out of your daily wages, seeking justice is a luxury he cannot afford for long.
सुनवाई होती है, कभी-कभी नहीं भी होती है, कभी-कभी ये नहीं, कभी रिपोर्ट नहीं आया तो कभी ये नहीं आया तो कभी वो नहीं आया. हम कब तक अपने बच्चों का काम धाम छोड़ के अब भागते रहेंगे कोर्ट में? एक आदमी को ऐसे 8 आदमी को हम थोड़ी भूखा रख देंगे.
These are just two of the over 1 lakh cases of sexual assault against children awaiting justice in the country's court. Now, the latest ordinance by the central government asks for death for child rapists, a timeline of 2 months for investigation and 2 months for trial. While this sounds extremely effective in paper and in law, government's own figures highlight that even with the earlier deadline of 1 year for POCSO cases, 90% of the cases could not reach the conviction stage.
Shocked by the high rate of pendency already prevailing in child sexual assault cases, the Supreme Court had ordered a review of a backlog under POCSO, which showed that over 1,12,000 cases under POCSO were pending trial before courts across the country. This since the Act came into being in 2012. UP topped this list with over 30,800 cases pending trial. There is not just huge pendency but poor conviction rate as well. In 2014, it was 30%. In 2015, the conviction rate improved to 36.3%. In 2016, it went down again to 29.6%. The top court now has ordered the state police chiefs to constitute special task forces, POCSO judges to give no adjournments and make every effort to fast-track trials. High courts have to constitute panels and ensure witnesses are produced in court on the day of hearing. But activists say this won't be easy to implement.
45% अगर हम देखें तो जो डिले का रीज़न है वो जजेस या कोर्ट की वजह से होता है. एक केस है जिसमें बच्चा 2016 जुलाई से अपने बयान के लिए जा रहा था और 2018 जनवरी के एंड में जाके उसका बयान कंप्लीट होता है. मुझे नहीं लगता कि वो जो 4 महीने की बात है वो कितना इफेक्टिव होगी.
The government says it's done its job and passed an ordinance. The Supreme Court says it's come up with guidelines. But till the time there are 20% vacancies in the police force and almost 20% posts empty in the lower judiciary as well, how will the country's children ever get justice? In New Delhi with camera person Fahad, Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor, NDTV.
And women's safety is suddenly turning out to be a poll issue in Karnataka. The Prime Minister today spoke about how important it is to teach our sons the right values and to question them, while Rahul Gandhi said that the Prime Minister hadn't spoken yet about the Katwa rape.
महिलाओं के खिलाफ होने वाली हिंसा को रोकने का पहला चरण है परिवार और समाज से मिलने वाले संस्कार. आपको याद होगा 15 अगस्त को लाल किले पर से भाषण करते समय मैंने संबोधन में कहा था कि हम बेटियों से हर 50 सवाल पूछते हैं, लेकिन बेटियों से पूछने वाले हम लोग क्या कभी बेटों से पूछते हैं? और बेटों को जब अपने संस्कार, अपनी मर्यादा का ध्यान रहेगा, तब समाज के नियमों का ध्यान रहेगा.
मोदी जी का नारा बदल गया. पहले नारा था बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ. अब नारा है बेटी बचाओ बीजेपी के एमएलए से. जम्मू कश्मीर में छोटी सी 8 साल की लड़की का रेप होता है, नरेंद्र मोदी जी के मुंह से एक शब्द नहीं निकलता. पहली बार इतिहास में, जो महिलाएं आई आप सुनिए, पहली बार इतिहास में हिंदुस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री को विदेश में सीधा बताया गया कि आप हिंदुस्तान की महिलाओं की रक्षा नहीं कर रहे हो.
Well, joining us tonight, Supreme Court Advocate Karuna Nandi here in the studio with us, Urvashi Tilak, who is with the Council to Secure Justice, a non-profit that is giving a free legal support to survivors of sexual violence and works with children in particular. Sharmishta Mukherjee, spokesperson of the Congress, and Vaibhav Agarwal, member of the BJP, also joining us tonight. Urvashi, let me ask you first. I'm sure you identified with a lot of what Sonal's report pointed out there. And that just brings me to the question that if we have not been able to effectively implement what was already under the law, under this special law for children, POCSO, including special courts, etc., which don't work on the ground in reality, is it realistic to expect that completing these trials within 4 months, having special courts, etc., now under this new ordinance will work?
Well, Nidhi, to point out, actually, most of the cases, as you mentioned, there is this higher pendency, and even if the special courts which are designated to just handle POCSO cases, and last year there has been an improvement, but these improvements are very minimal. For example, if I were to give some of the examples from our cases, the FSL report itself takes more than 2 years. In one of our cases, it took 5 years. So keeping those ground realities
for the forensics,
yes,
5 years,
yes, because there is high pendency of reports being pending, and because of those forensic reports, the trial is constantly pushed back. So now imagine the child, if the child is asked to come to testify maybe after 2 years or 3 years, how would you expect the child to remember all the details, and why should the child actually remember all the details? So this huge pendency will have a lot of backlash, but nobody in this midst of the entire chaos, nobody is talking about as to what exactly do the victims need. Are we actually talking about addressing the harm which is caused to them? Are we talking about rehabilitation services to them? What happens to these children once they testify? They're forgotten. There is no role which they have
So are you saying bringing in an ordinance or bringing in new laws is not the issue here? The point is you have POCSO, which is actually a pretty good law on paper, right?
Yes.
But we're not even able to implement that properly.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right about that, because in our personal experience, there are hardly cases which have got over in 1 year. I think I don't remember any of our cases which have got over in 1 year. It has almost taken around 3 years for the cases to get over. And if there is FSL report involved and there is investigation issues, then you cannot imagine the case getting over in 1 year. So I don't think practically, if you think about those cases, it is not possible. And given the cases that currently now the courts actually sit for a longer period of time, there are less adjournments as compared to what used to happen maybe a few years back. But in spite of all of that, it's going to be very, it's going to be very difficult to achieve what you mentioned about the ordinance.
So Karuna, how do you think, there's another question that pops up, is that where is the money going to come from for all of this? Because if you want to do these special courts and fast trials and have everything heard within a very specified period of time, which you were trying to do earlier as well, you need money for that, you need to invest in that, you need the infrastructure for that. That is one question. If you look at also what was already there in the existing law under the POCSO Act, you were supposed to have child-friendly courtrooms, you were supposed to have different ways in which the police would record the statements of the children, there would be some provision to rehabilitate the victims, and it's very clear that much of this has not been able to to take place. Therefore, do you also share that skepticism that Urvashi does about how we move forward from here?
You know, the issuing of the ordinance, and I think the reaction of people in general was quite disappointing, because there's a way in which just the issuance of the ordinance took the pressure away from, I think, the system of governance, whereas the sort of pressure should have been kept on until we see real results. And that ordinance, the main thing that it announces is the death penalty, for instance, right? And a minimum sentence for, I think, 20 years. We have seen time and time and time again is that when you have strong minimum mandatory sentences, the acquittal rates rise, particularly in situations where the sexual assault, which happens very frequently in child rape, is by a person that is known to the child or known to the victim. But also, Nidhi, the first question that you asked is an extremely good question. And the reason is this, is that, you know, our country is hugely underinvested in the rule of law and law and order, which it seems counterintuitive and bizarre, because if you, it's not that we're adequately invested, I think, in education and health either, but at least the process is gone through, which is that when you're thinking about education, when you're thinking about health, you automatically think about investment. When you think about rule of law, very rarely is there a finance bill tabled at the same time as an amendment to the law, right? In fact, almost I can't remember any instance where that was done. And when you have an amendment to the law, obviously there are changes that are going to need to come. So, for example, if you expand the number of
special
the ambit. So, if you expand the number of victims, for example, if you include boys, boys obviously have to be included in in offences against children, and unlike in the standard rape laws, I do believe that under POCSO, women, should be recognized as perpetrators, because there is that huge power imbalance, right? And so when you're expanding the ambit of the law, obviously you need to sort of see whether the current court infrastructure is adequate to bear that burden, and if not, how much you need to expand it. Our court infrastructure is, if you look at the conviction rates for POCSO and if you look at the conviction rates for all rape cases, they are much lower than other cognizable offences, or definitely other IPC offences. And
exactly.
So when this false bogey of false cases and all that,
which
it's
which brings me to the next point, which is that we often, Vaibhav, I think the criticism I would make of both the UPA and the NDA governments is Nirbhaya happened. There was this public outcry. Very quickly, a law was kind of hastily brought in. And there's still a debate about whether that is necessarily the best law, even on paper. The same thing has happened here. It seems to be a sort of a band-aid reaction to a much bigger problem. So where is the money going to come from to finance this infrastructure for everything that's been promised in the ordinance? How is it going to work?
We've been on these debates, and these are a very sad situation in the country today. I've always said that it's not just the law that can fix this. No matter how much money we can pump in, no matter how many ordinances, laws, cases we hear, punishments we offer, half of the times, she would know, Karuna would agree, half of the times those punishments would never even get through because of the time lag that happens. So either the evidence is destroyed, or the evidence is never complete, or the people have gone haywire. Some stuff like that. Now, we need to look at it in terms of the society at war internally. The social awareness is very, very important, and for that purpose, for that reason only. For example, in last 1 year, the Modi government has brought in about 15 odd proposals just in last 1 year to actually bring a multi-agency kind of an environment, and this is a multi-agency environment. Just the Ministry of WCD can't just do this alone. This is a multi-agency. There'll be courts involved. And everyone has its own red tape in India. Everyone has its own budget issues. So we've been able to allocate close to 2,000 crores in last just 1 year, and considering about 15 proposals alone for multi-agency parallel system. Where is that money going? So money is there. The allocation of the fund, the budget is actually happening to the Ministry of Women and Child Development and Welfare. But where is this going? Now, this will go, right now, this is in the proposal stage. A lot of these 15 things are on a proposal stage.
Vaibhav, what's the specific, could you give me something specific on it? Because I'd like to look it up.
Sure. So, for example, there's a proposal that has come up.
2,000 crores. What is this 2,000 crores and who has it gone to? Just give me the specifics.
Yeah, so there is a proposal that has gone through to MHA, for example, from the WCD for the emergency response support system, for which 300 plus crores have been allocated. There's a proposal, this is last year. And of course, we understand that there's so much to do in this country, so much legacy to deal with, and I'm sorry I'm having to bring this up, but I don't want to make it political, but there is a lot of red tape that is there, and we have to process that. Multi-agency buy-ins are not easy. So there is one emergency response support system, creation of central victim compensations fund, again MHA, creation of investigative units, especially for crime against women. So far, it's not existing. So the beginning is already having women volunteers inside the police stations. Yes, implementation can be questionable.
Actually, it's a great idea that you just given me, because I think we need to do a reality check on all these proposals as well. Because we've done a reality check on the pendencies. But Sharmishta Mukherjee asked the Congress the same question, which is, are these band-aid solutions?
And I think a fact check needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely, Karuna. We need to do a fact check on that. But Sharmishta, the same problem. Are these band-aid solutions? Do you need an ordinance like this to sort of deal with public anger? And then everyone kind of forgets about it, but the real issues remain.
I strongly feel that just by making laws stricter and stricter, it is not a solution. You know, we have seen after 2013 the laws were made stricter with amendment of CRPC, but that did not stop the stop rapes. You know, recently there has been a case of a rape of a minor girl in Assam, where supposedly the accused is a police officer. Wasn't he aware of the laws?
Correct, absolutely.
So it is a very complex situation where just by making laws it's not sufficient. It is the implementation of the law, the speedy dispensation of the justice, it's creating of that infrastructure, you know, which is conducive of to, you know, a speedy dispensation of justice. And also I think the whole focus has been in terms of what happens after the crime has been committed. But we are completely ignoring that how to prevent from these crimes to happen. That's correct. Sonal was mentioning about that little boy that, you know, who can't, after being sodomized, who can't walk. So even if the guilty, even if the accused is punished in the strictest terms, but what about that little boy who is going to suffer for the rest of his life?
That's correct.
So I think the focus should be, you know, along with, of course, it's extremely important to have strong laws and also effective implementation, but also I think focus should be that how to stop these crimes from happening. Prevention is better than cure.
Yeah.
Well, you know, let me just ask Urvashi this question, and this is important because, and Karuna made a mention of it as well. What complicates the issue, especially with child abuse cases, is that more than in any other kind of crime, the victims are the perpetrator is known to the victim. Absolutely. It's a family member or a family friend, and that just makes the whole process much more complicated, doesn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, in our experience, there has been several cases where we have handled incest cases, and even if the mother is initially supportive, it's really difficult. In our recent case, you know, the child had a very supportive mother. That's why the incident was reported in the first place. But after a few months, the mother decided to not support the child because she realized she had other kids to look at, and with the main bread earner gone, she faced a lot of difficulties. So there was a lot of pressure also on the child to turn hostile. So nobody's looking at those angles. And another case where, again an incest case, the father was in police and he was convicted. But in spite of the conviction, that did not necessarily address the needs of the victim. You know, the child right now is, I mean, she has grown up, but at the same time, she's not been able to reintegrate with the family. She wants to go back, she wants to get rehabilitated, she wants to be with the family, but this constant juxtaposition which has happened, it becomes really difficult for the child to get back.
And that's a very important point. And Vaibhav, when you talked about money and all this money that's being allocated, there were 3,400 crores that were also allocated under the Nirbhaya fund. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, under the Modi government, that allocation actually was halved. What happened to that money?
Okay,
so let's forget about all this other money. That Nirbhaya fund is from after her gang rape, right? Uska kya hua?
So, okay, so I wouldn't outrightly say that it was halved. It was only expanded and divided into certain other sections, and that's how the money, the overall budget, was divided into other activities. So I wouldn't have the details right now to that. We can.
That money hasn't been spent.
That money has been spent,
Sonal,
but
who
not
did
in
this report,
totality.
did that story as well, just a few months ago.
Correct.
About how the Nirbhaya fund is lying unused.
The Nirbhaya
so what is the
fund
point of allocating
is
new
lying
funds?
underused. So it's not just unused, because understand that Nirbhaya fund was a policy made at the central level, wherein the multi-agency that I am referring to, the multi-stakeholder, pans down to the states of the country. So it's not just the central ministries who would utilize the fund. That's even worse, because working with the states, each independent state government is just not easy, because you have its own challenges.
But I'm saying that then allocating funds means nothing.
Yeah, but
if they're not used.
Exactly, I understand.
What Vaibhav is referring to is a PIB press release of the 22nd of July, 27th of July 2017. That's where he's reading from.
Right.
He's referred to the emergency response support system, etc. Like whatever. There's a whole bunch
My
of
perspective on that,
now,
Karuna,
the problem with the Nirbhaya fund is that, and the historical problem, if I may just finish,
Sure.
The problem with the Nirbhaya fund is this, and it always has been this, and it's not just the NDA, it has been the UPA as well, is that nobody spends the money. The money is not spent. it all sounds fine on paper.
Exactly.
It's a bit like Modi ji's speech just now in, that we heard what he was saying. It all sounds good, it sounds good to say that our sons should, behave in a particular manner, etc.
Unfortunately, Rahul did not even touch it.
Sounded good. All his ads sounded good. But when you see it doesn't matter, Rahul's the opposition. You're in government right now.
Yeah.
So the point is that it all sounds good, but nothing ever gets done. If you looked at even the manifesto of the BJP, there was one page out of some like 40 something, dedicated to these things. So if you look at actual action, any efficiency on the ground, when it comes to child rape, then we see a sort of, not just an apathy, but a sort of communalization also. And I'm not going to hesitate to say this, because the recent child rape case that we saw in Kathua, for example, right? The problem there is like this communalization, the saving of the sort of, throwing the victim to the dogs in some ways. In Unnao, you see something similar where this Dalit girl is raped and the father is killed and the accused is actually a BJP MLA. And so
I want to say that before I end.
That, I got to defend that, because if you touch that,
you
got to bring in the Maulvi and the Christian father and the other guys.
There is no Christian. No. 1 second. Vaibhav, let's not digress from this debate.
Correct. So I don't want to do that.
The difference between the rape of the girl in the madrasa and the difference between what happened in Kathua, let me just say this, is that you did not have lawmakers taking out marches in favor of the child that was raped in the madrasa. There is a big difference, and that is why there was outrage over Kathua. And I also want to say before we end here, and I want to revisit this story, that it's very well for the Prime Minister to talk about women's safety and for all politicians to do that. But then you had a Deputy Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir who called Kathua a minor issue that doesn't need to be reported. You have a BJP MLA who attended a rally for the rapists of the Hindu Ekta Manch, who was made a minister.
Hindu Ekta Manch is led by the General Secretary of the Congress.
It was a rally for the rapists or not?
That? There is a beginning, this government has done a beginning,
you have to be very clear on what the messaging is.
And there is a concrete roadmap that this government is trying to make. The government cannot enter into our houses to fix our mindsets to stop raping it. And that's where the Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao Andolan is there.
Stop appointing rape apologists as ministers and we'll get somewhere. Stop appointing rape apologists as ministers. Have to leave it there tonight. Thank you to our panelists for joining us. It's an important issue and one we'll continue to follow. Also, we will follow up on all these funds that you talked about and what has happened to them. We'll see you again next week. Good night.